I think I've mentioned before that I really like to watch Home and Garden television, HGTV. And one of my new favorite shows is the one about tiny houses. You like that one? Even Hunter likes it. I mean, what's something like? But I think what I like is, what really captures my imagination, what fascinates me, is the fact that these couples, sometimes even families with small children, give up much larger homes and, of course, the debts that go with them to move into these tiny homes, many of which are literally no bigger than my master bedroom, bathroom, and closet. I mean, they truly decide to downsize. They give up on having so many things in order to live a more simplified life. A life where they are not burdened with possessions and the crushing debts that often come with those, in order to spend more of their time living, truly living. They spend more of their time concentrating on the things in life that matter most, such as spending time with their family or experiencing life more fully. And as I watch these shows week after week, truth be told, there's a part of me that envies that more simple lifestyle and even hopes that maybe someday I'll be able to do that. Of course, that's not exactly feasible right now in a household that holds 3 adults and 1 energetic 7-year-old. But I do realize that I could get by with less than we have. And so I dream about that someday when things will matter less than people. When instead of buying more, I can purge my life of all the trappings that keep me trapped. And spend more time and energy, and yes, money, on being richer toward God. Because on my best days, and granted those aren't that often, but on my best days, I realize that those are the things that matter most in life. In today's passage from Luke, Jesus is approached by someone in the crowd who is obviously embroiled in a family feud over an inheritance and needs a religious authority like Jesus to render judgment against his brother. Now, all along through Luke, Jesus has been encouraging his followers to be fearless and faithful in preaching the kingdom of God. And then along comes this man, apparently whining about a problem that to Jesus must sound pretty petty in comparison. So rather than giving the kind of judgment the man is hoping for, Jesus, like only Jesus can do, recognizes this as a teachable moment. And he gives the man in the crowd and us a warning. Watch out. Guard yourself against all kinds of greed. After all, one's life isn't determined by one's possessions, even when one is very wealthy. At the heart of this parable is an abundant harvest, which in and of itself might seem like a good thing. But in this story, it's not. Not because the man has been blessed, but because of what he does or doesn't do with that blessing. You see, instead of sharing his abundance with others, this man thinks only of himself. Think about this. Even his conversation in this parable is with himself. Listen again to the conversation he has with himself. I will do this. I will pull down my barns and build bigger, larger ones, and there I will store all my grain and my goods. And I will say to my soul, soul, you have enough. to rest. So just sit back, relax, eat, drink, and be merry. It's an absolutely egocentric conversation. And there is absolutely no thought given to others or to their needs. And therein, I think, lies the problem. This story, in this story, for this man, it's all about him. Now, I have to say that from everything we read, there's no indication that this man is, in fact, an evil man. There's nothing that says that he cheated or that he stole his wealth. He's just extremely self-centered. He's benefited from probably hard work and undoubtedly a lot of good luck. The trap, though, that he falls into comes in those next steps. For when he has a windfall, instead of running into the village, celebrating and announcing his plan to share his good fortune with the community in which he lives, let alone ask for their help in deciding how to deal with this exceedingly good problem he has, he instead turns inward. And that's where he stays, figuring that he can be self-sufficient and secure solely because of his good fortune and his wealth. So again, hear this. It's not his wealth that's the problem. It's his selfishness. In the story, he uses the first person, I, in my 11 times. And never, ever does he say us, our, or their. You know, I don't often consider myself a wealthy person. But the reality of it is, I am. In a country in which roughly 15% of the population, or 47 million people, live in poverty, and poverty translates to a family of 4 living on an income of $24,000 a year or less. Can you even imagine that? And a whopping 33%, or 105 million people, who live on twice the stated poverty threshold, which would be $48,000 for a family of 4. I have to realize that I am indeed very, very wealthy. And that's just comparing myself to others in this country. We go beyond our borders, my wealth grows even larger. Bottom line, I am blessed in so many ways. I don't have to worry about putting a roof over my family's head. I don't have to worry about mom putting food on our table. In fact, I live in a nice home, and we have plenty to eat. And I am very grateful for that. But if I'm honest, that gratefulness doesn't always culminate in the kind of generosity towards others that I think God not only wants, but expects. And in many ways, I fall into the same self-centered trap as the rich man in today's story. So the question I ask myself is, when is enough enough? And I need to keep asking myself, why is it when I am wealthy by all standards, do I still sometimes feel that need to accumulate even more? And when I ask myself those questions. Where I end up is at a place that I think really captures the lesson of the story. Our attempts to fill holes or to find security in things in and of themselves will always fall short. Because wealth or material goods or anything we can accomplish or accumulate can never fill the hole in us that only God can fill. I think I've told some of you before that there was a time in my life when I tried to fill the holes, the emptiness I sometimes felt by accumulating things, I collected junk that I'm still trying to get rid of. In a sense, having a family to care for and a son for whom I am ultimately responsible has made me much better about that than I used to be. But again, if I'm honest, I have to admit that I am not yet fully there. And some days I'm nowhere close. I'm not where I want to be, and I'm certainly not where I think God wants me to be. And yes, there are still times when I try to fill the holes, the emptiness, with things rather than with God. And one of the surefire signs that my life, especially my spiritual life, is out of balance, that my relationship with God is not what it could be or should be, is when I find myself once again trying to fill those holes with things. You see, I think we all have holes in our lives. I think we all have those empty places from time to time that we try to fill with things or experiences or, for some, even addictions. But those holes ultimately can only be filled with a relationship with God. Some people call that hole a God-shaped hole because only God can fill it. And filling that hole or holes, that emptiness, truly is dependent on being in a relationship with God, but also in a relationship with others. David Lose, one of my favorite writers, says that Jesus knew that. He knew that material things, no matter how fun and comforting, lovely and useful they may be, will never completely satisfy our deepest longings. We will always want more. Why? Because material goods make very poor gods for us to worship. And that is the truth at the core of our relationship with our God. The prophets talked about it in the Hebrew scripture, the Old Testament, when they were constantly calling people back from worshiping other gods and gods other than the God of Israel. And Jesus preaches a gospel of spiritual value centered on that one true God, not the many petty, fragile little gods that somehow grab our attention and too often in our hearts. What matters most, if you read the Gospels as a whole, is relationship. Our relationship with God and our relationship with others. And if you look at what Jesus says, those two go together. You can't have one unless you have the other. They're inextricably intertwined. That's why Jesus tells us stories like the parable of the Good Samaritan we talked about a few weeks ago. Stories that invite us to think more broadly about who we imagine being our neighbor. That's why Jesus preaches sermons that extol caring for the poor and loving our enemies and doing good for those in need. And not once, though, does Jesus lift up setting up a retirement account, or securing a higher paying job, or buying more shoes, or more jewelry, or taking more trips, or buying more collectibles, or more clothes for my son. Never does Jesus talk about those things when Jesus talks about the kingdom of God. Yet even though I know this to be true beyond a shadow of doubt, I still struggle. I buy Hunter way more clothes than he can ever wear. I buy stuff for the house. I buy my sister a bed instead of spending time with her and telling her that I love her and showing her that I love her by treating her more kindly, by taking the time to listen to her. Which do you think she'd rather have? The new bed? In case you didn't see that, she said yes. I was kind of banking on you would rather have time with me. That's where you should never ask your family to be, or include your family in your sermons without telling them first. I'll still contend, though, that in the end, she would rather have a better relationship with me than anything I could buy. Because really, truly, that's what matters most. But again, I struggle. Most recently, I found myself obsessing over the fact that summer break was almost over and I had not yet provided Hunter a proper vacation, whatever that means. So in my frenzy to do that, to give him something memorable that he could talk about with his classmates, I decided to spend a ridiculously insane amount of money to take him and Crystal to spend just one night at the Great Wolf Lodge in Grapevine. And what I spent on that one night could probably feed a family of 4 for a month. And so we're going to do that in a couple of weeks. And he'll have that memory, but then it'll be gone. But a dear friend of mine wisely pointed out that instead of spending that ridiculously insane money for one night's entertainment, what Hunter would likely be as happy with is just spending more time with me. But you moms know about mama guilt, right? Guilt about being gone so much this spring and summer, attending general conference and annual conference and funerals and working another walk to Emmaus. So I booked and I paid for this incredibly expensive mini vacation in an attempt to make up for some of the time I haven't spent with him this summer. And honestly, I don't feel good about that. Yes, we'll go. Yes, we'll have a fabulous time. But in the end, I just can't feel good about spending that kind of money for one night in 1.5 days in the temple. Now, the good news is that I've also begun listening to my wise friend, and I've started making a more conscientious effort to do more mother-son things with Hunter. Simple things. Things that don't cost a whole lot. Things that I think in the end will end up mattering the most. And I'm also spending more time with God and attending to the neighbors God has put in my path, those God has entrusted to my care. And in doing that, I find myself turning that corner again and feeling hopeful and feeling more full. You know, there's nothing that feeds my soul more than the pastor to the people God's entrusted to my care. And so I've spent more time with God, and I've spent more time with some of you, and some who aren't here today, trying to do what God has called me to do. Because relationships, community, purpose, those are the kinds of things that Jesus invites us to embrace, to strive for. But they're much harder to lay our hands on, aren't they? I mean, we know what a good relationship feels like, but it's hard to point to or produce on a moment's notice. And we know what a wonderful feeling it is of being accepted in a community like Journey of Faith. But it's not like you can run out to Walmart and pick it up. And so many of us are guilty of substituting material goods for immaterial ones. Because, hey, they're right there in front of us. And our culture as a whole teaches us that that's what we need to fill our emptiness inside. But a part of the promise of this week's gospel lesson is that Jesus came to tell us that God wants so much more for us than simply stuff. God wants for us life and love and mercy and community. Indeed, the same Jesus who warns against greed and invites abundant life tells us of God's love in the passages we've been reading this summer. They all carry that message of love. And Jesus carries that message of love and relationship all the way to the cross, so that we will understand just